So the next section, we're going to be talking about making the purchase. So congratulations, you have found a home you want to buy. Let's write a contract. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to do a comparative market analysis. And in doing that research, I'm going to look at all the properties similar to the home that you're interested in purchasing that are either currently on the market, under contract, or that have sold recently. And the purpose in doing that is we're going to be able to help see what other home buyers and sellers have agreed that property like the one you're interested in are worth. And we're going to use that data to help put together your contract. In writing your purchase contract, it's required to have an earnest money deposit. I usually recommend about 1% of the sales price. Some people go up to 5%, but the more you put down, the stronger your offer looks. If a seller receives multiple offers, very similar loans, down payments, but one person's putting down 5 grand, the other puts down 1 grand, that one at 5 grand shows a little bit more serious, and I've seen sellers go with the ones with the higher earnest money. Depending on your situation, though, you may get this back at closing. In the example I referenced earlier with the VHDA Plus loan, you have 100% of your down payment paid with the loan. And then if we can negotiate seller pay closing costs, normally your EMD goes toward your closing cost or your down payment. But if you have all that covered, you can actually get your earnest money back at closing. So next in your packet is a sample contract. If you look at the sample contract here, there's a lot of different parts. They've made it really easy. It's just fill in the blank, but it's still 8 pages long. It's a lot of information, and I'm going to help fill that out based on your situation and what you want to put in the contract, and then review that with you. In presenting the contract, once we've filled all this out, I'll have y'all sign it, and then we'll send it over to the listing agent, and they'll negotiate with their sellers and respond. A couple of things they can do. The first one is they can accept the offer as it is presented. Yes. The second thing is they can reject it completely. They could say, screw you, go to heck, we don't care, we're not responding. You know, it's really rare unless the seller receives what they perceive as a lowball offer. The third thing they could do is they can counter it. And they can counter it in a lot of different ways because there's a lot of different terms and conditions of the contract other than just the price. So let's say, for example, you offered $200,000 for the home. Well, they could counter the price and say, well, we want $210,000. Let's say in the personal property section, you asked for their washer, dryer, and refrigerator. Well, they could scratch out the washer dryer part and say, well, we just bought these. We're not going to give these up. We love them. So they could scratch that out, send it back with those crossed off, and that could be a counter. You could want to close on a Monday. They could say, well, it's better for us to close on a Tuesday. There's a variety of different ways they can counter, but any change to the contract is considered a counter. So whether they accept it as is, or if we counter back and forth once or twice, once we are all in agreement, everyone's happy with all the different terms and conditions of the property, everyone signs, if there's any changes, they initial the changes, we call that a ratified contract. That means you just bought a house, and that's a legal binding contract. And in that, there are a couple contingency those to protect you as the buyer before we get to closing, the house is officially yours. The first one is the home inspection contingency, and the second one is the financing contingency. So when we go to look at the first contingency, after we go under contract, typically the average days is 10 days. So we'll have 10 days to do any type of inspection we want to the property. The most common is just a general home inspection from a certified licensed home inspector. So we'll have the home inspector out. I'll be very honest, it's not exciting at all. It takes about 3 to 4 hours. He flips a light switch on and off, light works, he writes it down. He clicks the fan on and off, fan works, writes it down. He opens and shuts a door. Oh, the door doesn't shut quite right. He'll write latch needs, tightening. So he'll go around and he will test everything that he can see, and it's a visual inspection. It's not like on TV where they bust open walls. It's anything that he can see and touch, he will test. And at the end of the 3 hours, he's going to compile a report. The home inspector I recommend actually types it up and prints it and binds it all while during that 3 hours. And whether you want to come and you want to stay for the full 3 or 4 hours, you're perfectly fine. I have some clients that are really busy. They may come just for the last 30 minutes when he will review the report. I've had other clients that don't come at all, and I just get them a report and we review it later. But most of the time, if they can, a client typically would want to come meet the home inspector, ask him any questions about the property, and that's what I recommend if possible. And when he gives us the report, the purpose of doing the home inspection is if we're looking for major defects, things wrong with the house, potential safety, health issues. We're not looking for the small items like the door doesn't latch or if there's like a burnt out light bulb. And when we look here at the actual verbiage I pulled from the contract, you as the purchaser has the right to have the property inspected at your expense. And then we have an opportunity to request repair or repair credit of defects revealed. So what exactly is a defect? Well, the contract defines a defect as a condition which impairs the normal stability, safety, or use of any improvement. An improvement is essentially the house. It's improved from the land. Or damage to any part of that house, but shall exclude any cosmetic flaws, antiquated systems, or grandfather components in working order. So the first part, cosmetic flaws. Essentially, that's like bad paint jobs, anything that's just considered cosmetic. If you have like a shutter that's a little loose, that's not going to impair this normal stability, safety, or use of the house. And there's not any damage to the house that would cause it unusable with that. An antiquated system, let's say it's like a really old type of heat, but it still works. Yeah, it would be nice to have a brand new 16 SEER heat pump, but their old heat works. We can't ask them to change it out just because. And then grandfather components in working order. Any house that was built before today or this year is going to be out of code in one way or another. They always are constantly updating and changing it. So what they do is they say if you were at code at the time it was built, you're grandfathered in. The most common one I see is deck railings. Almost every single home inspection report, he's going to say that the railings are 6 inches apart. Now they should be 4 inches apart. And he'll still point that out just so you are aware, but we can't ask for them to move all the railings to 4 inches apart. Those things are grandfathered in. And these inspections may include but are not limited to all structural and building components, any systems, radon gas, underground storage tanks, soil condition, environmental testing, engineering studies. You can have anyone come in to test anything on that house within that 10-day period if that's the time frame you agree in the contract at your expense. Typically, people will have the general home inspector, and if he sees something he's not really comfortable with, he may recommend a specialist to come in at that point. And that's why I like doing the home inspection as soon as possible after you go under contract. So if there is an issue, if there needs a specialist to come in, we still have time within that 10-day period. So the home inspector comes, he gives us the report of defects. We'll look at which ones are real issues and which ones are not. And then you'll have that opportunity to ask for some of the defects to be either repaired or have a credit toward those repairs for you to do later. This is another round of negotiations. The sellers are not required to fix any or all of the repairs that you request. So we'll go over the report together and figure out what's important to you. We'll put together an addendum, send it over, and we'll start the negotiations. But theoretically, let's say everything is, we figure it out. You ask for 3 things, they'll fix 2. You're okay with that. Everyone signs off of it, and we move forward. That part of the home inspection is satisfied, or that contingency is satisfied. If for some reason we can't come to an agreement, if there's a bunch of things wrong and they're not going to fix them, well, you're not stuck buying that house. You do have to give them the opportunity to fix those items, but if they say no to any of them, then you have the opportunity to walk away. Essentially, we'd cancel, get your earnest money back, and we'll go find you a different house. But for the sake of this example, let's say we get it negotiated, everything's fine, and we move on to the next contingency, which is the financing contingency. And there's a couple different parts to this. First and foremost, the property would need to pass an appraisal. The second part is that you need to get clear title and title insurance issued. And the third part is just final approval from the loan, the lender, and underwriting. So the first part with an appraisal, your lender is required to send out an independent third-party appraiser to get their opinion of value of the home. They want to make sure that the home is worth what they're lending on it, because not only is it an investment to you, it's an investment for them to help you with the loan. He's going to do very similar research to what we did in our CMA, this comparative market analysis, when we put together the contract, but he's going to go into a whole lot more detail, and he's going to just compare other similar homes and come up with his opinion of value. Most of the time, the value is at or above what my clients and the sellers agreed to sell it at. Every once in a while, though, the appraised value is going to come in low. Sometimes they call it a cut appraisal, and there are a couple things we can do at that point. It's not ideal, of course, and it doesn't happen a lot. And my intention is not to have you worry about it. It doesn't happen so much that you should be worried, but if it does happen, that's why having a professional like myself is a benefit, and there are a couple routes we can go to. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. So let's say, for example, the house is at 200, the appraisal comes in at 205. We're great, no worries there. Let's say it comes in at 200 on the dot. Hey, we're still great, no worries there. But let's say it comes in at 195. Ooh, all right, a little low, not a lot, but the lender's not going to want to lend more than 195. So what do? Well, there's three options. The first one is we can see if we can get the seller to agree to change the price to 195. The second thing is if the seller either refuses or can't lower the price due to like what he has to owe to pay off on the loan when he sells it, he may say, I can't do owe any lower than 200. It is what it is. You would have the opportunity as the buyer to pay that difference to help get the property closed at $5,000. The third option is you could split it with the seller. He could come down to 2,500. You could come up 2,500. You could go, so that's 50-50. You could go 60-40, 30-70, whatever we would agree upon. If for some reason we can't agree upon any of these three steps, you're not required to buy a house because you're not going to be able to get a loan without an appraisal. And then at that point, we'd get your earnest money back and go find you a different home. Doesn't happen a lot, but I just want to make you aware that that is a possibility. The next thing is we need to get title insurance on your property. And title is essentially the piece of paper that says you own this home. And the reason we have title insurance is because no matter how much homework and research we do at the courthouse, there are still just some unknown things that can pop up and then actually have someone else have a legal right to some of your house. And that's not ideal for you or the lender. Your lender is going to require title insurance to protect you and them as your investment. So why do you need title insurance? Because there's hidden risks. And on the slide here, there's just a couple of many. The most common ones are missing heirs, false impersonators, forgeries, improperly probated wills, clerical errors. Any of these things could cause someone else to have a legal right in your house that no one could have ever predicted. For example, let's say you moved in and 6 months later you get a knock on your door and it's this lady and she's yelling and screaming and you're confused and you're like, what's going on? She's like, this is my house, get out of my house. And you're like, whoa, 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 slow down. What do you mean? Well, my husband, locked me up in a insane asylum and forged my name on the deed and I own half this house. Well, that's an extreme example, and in my career, I haven't heard of any of my clients actually needing to use their title insurance, but it's such a big investment. It's so much money. It's not worth that hidden risk, even if it is a small percentage chance of it happening, to lose some of your right to your home. So whether you get a loan or not, if you get a loan, your lender requires it. If you don't get a loan, it's not required, but I would still highly recommend you getting it. Compared to the investment you're making, it's not a lot of money. So to me, it's a no-brainer. So last but not least, so we've gone through the home inspection, we negotiated that, we're all good. The appraisal came in, we're fine there. You got title insurance issued, you have clear title. Last but not least is final approval from underwriting. They'll dot all their I's, they'll cross all their T's. You've given them many documents and more documents, and they'll give you the final thumbs up. So we're good to close, but before we go to closing, let's do a quick walkthrough. The reason we do a walkthrough is if the house was occupied, we want to check it out now that all the stuff's moved out. Make sure it's still in the same condition as the last time you saw it. If it was vacant, you still want to do a walkthrough because after closing, there's no going back. So if something happened to the house, let's say the neighbor was weed whacking and he kicked up a rock and it cracked your window. Well, if you didn't do a walkthrough and you closed and you came home and you're all excited and you're like, wait, my window's cracked. Well, congratulations, that's your new cracked window. But if we see it a couple days before closing, we have the opportunity to get the seller to fix it because you didn't write a contract on a house with a cracked window. A couple things to remember as we approach closing, and me and my staff will remind you of this as we get closer. But to simply arrange for utilities to be put in your name starting on the day you close. Well before closing, your either attorney or closing company will help you arrange for insurance to be in effect that day. A couple things on insurance. You usually get the best deal if you bundle with your car insurance. So I know a lot of clients of mine will contact whomever they have car insurance with to get a quote, but I always recommend getting 2 to 3 quotes so you can call a couple different companies and have them run hypothetical scenarios of if you bring your car over and you do your house, what kind of monthly or yearly payment are you looking at? If you're getting a loan, they're going to package your homeowner's insurance and your taxes into your, if you get a fixed rate, into that monthly fixed rate amount. They pay them for you. So all that will be grouped in. Even though you pick your homeowner's insurance company, they pay them for you. You can switch it down the road if you do decide to change. You just have to contact whomever you have your loan with to be able to notify them. Pack ahead of time just to kind of make the move a lot easier. You can consider yard sales or donated unwanted items to charity. If you're using a moving company, I can help you get a couple estimates well in advance. We got to make sure the date you want to move is available in their schedule. And lastly, just to change your address for mail at the USPS, any bills, magazines, past employers for W-2s, DMV for car and voting, and of course you got to notify your friends and family. So we're finally here. It's been 30, 45 days since you found the house and we wrote the contract, and it's time for closing. This is where you'll sign your name a couple dozen times, and it takes about 30 minutes on average. Go through all the loan paperwork. The girls at the attorney or the closing company are really good at explaining everything as they go through the packet. But you'll sign through it, and once you're done signing all the paperwork, it's official. The house is yours. I'll give you the keys. We'll do a high five, and we're done. So that's been the process of buying a home. The next video, I'll talk briefly about home warranties. It'll be a pretty quick video. But the number one thing just to keep in mind throughout this process and as your buyer's agent, my number one goal is your satisfaction. And in the packet here, we can see a survey. And if you're going to fill out the survey for me, you see knowledge, listening skills, availability, friendliness, I would want you to give me 10s on every single thing. I want you to think I'm the best agent in the world. You're going to refer me to all your friends and family. Just super excited and super happy about everything that I did. And if for some reason at the end of the process, you're not feeling that you can give me a 10 on every single one of these categories, well, please let me know during the process. Let me know beforehand. Please give me that opportunity to fix whatever you may not be feeling I'm doing a 10 out of 10 on. because I'd rather be able to have the opportunity to fix it and have you be ecstatic at the end versus you sitting down looking at the list and then afterwards you're like, man, only feels a little more friendly, and you like circle a 4 for friendliness. I know everybody's different. I try to adapt to each of my client and their personalities. But the biggest thing is I'm not a mind reader. I definitely try my hardest to do my best at all times, and my intention is for you to have the best experience possible. I know with selling and buying real estate, it can be stressful, but throughout that process, my job is to help make it less stressful. And if there's ever anything I can do, please let me know during the process. So I really appreciate you watching these videos. I do recommend to check out the next one on home warranties, and then just checking out my YouTube page for the market updates. Every market is different. Every city, changes month to month what's going on a national and a local level. And watching that video will definitely help you get a better idea of what's going on here now. And then when we meet, of course, we can talk about that more. So thank you so much for watching this part of the video, and I look forward to seeing you soon at our meeting.